We're up to Daf Tzadi Gimel, but we're going to start a little bit before that on Tzadi Beis Amid Beis. And the Gemara here, 4 lines from the bottom of Tzadi Beis Amid Beis, 4 lines up from the bottom, is rejecting an interpretation of Yochanan and the proof to the Shita of Rav, Amalei Reb Reish Lakish, Ilav de Kalsach Gavra Rabba. If not for the fact that Rav Yanai, who was an Adam Gadol, was Mishabech you in interpretation, in your interpretation. The Mishnah Hava Minalach Ano Masnisin Rabbi Akivahi. Our Mishnah, in which it becomes clear that Kedushin are not Tovsim B'Yavama. In other words, if a woman falls for Yibum and somebody marries her other than the Yavama, the Yavam, then that Kedushin is not Chal. That's not the sheet of Rav, but rather Rabbi Akiva. The Omar Ein Kedushin Tovsim B'Chayvei Lavin. Rabbi Akiva holds that from Chayvei Lavin is Mamzerus, and there's no Kedushin in a case of Chayvei Lavin because it generates Mamzerus. So the Yavama is Asur L'Shuk V'Iso Lav because of Losia Eshta Mesa Chutz L'Zar. And therefore, according to Rabbi Akiva, ain't Kedushin Tovsim Bo. And the Machlokas Shin Rav and Shmuel, that's according to the Chachamim, who hold that in general Kedushin Tovsim B'Chayvei Lavin. And that's where Rav says that the Chachamim concede in the case of Yavam L'Shuk that ain't Kedushin Tovsim Bo, and Rav derives that from a special pasuk. So now the Gemara is going to raise an objection to Reish Lakish because of his attributing a Mishnah to Rabbi Akiva. Ve'i Rabbi Akiva, and if you're saying the Mishnah reflects the Shita of Rabbi Akiva, then I'll ask you the following question. He Amar Allah, what happens if a person says to the Yavama, quote unquote, his kadshi li achar sheyachlotz lich Yevamot, marry me after the chalitza of the Yavam. Then litfasi ba kedusha. In that case, the kedushin, even according to Rabbi Akiva, despite the fact that it's chayvei lavim now, should be valid, and the kedushin will only take effect after the chalitza. Now, at this particular moment, he cannot be Makadisha because she's the Yavam L'Shuk, and we're going to Rabbi Akiva, Ein Kedushin Tovsim B'Chayvei Lavin. But nevertheless, he wants to be Makadisha for a future period of time. He's going to do the Maisa Kedushin now, and the Kedushin will only become valid later on after the Chalitza. And why would that be effective and valid? That if I make a kinyan with you now, and it's impossible for that kinyan to be chal now because the object that I'm selling you or giving you doesn't even exist, nevertheless, the kinyan will take place now, the Maisa kinyan, and the chalos kinyan will take place later when the object emerges into the world. And that's Rabbi Akiva. We're going to study today on Daf Tzadi Gimel an entire series of shitos amongst the Tanoim and the Amoraim that maintain that shita, that Adam Makne Davar Shelo B'Aliyol. When our Mishnah says that there's no Kedushin Tovsim in the Yavam L'Shuk, we should expect a certain qualification. That although it's true that right now the Kedushin cannot be Chal, but he could set up a Kedushin with the Yavam L'Shuk that will take effect later after the Chalitza. And I'm going to prove to you that if you are interpreting, you meaning Reish Lakish, our Mishnah like Rabbi Akiva, then even Rabbi Akiva would concede that in fact you can create a Tfisas Kedushin with the Yavam L'Shuk based on the principle of Adam Makne Dover Shelo B'Aliyol. Tisnan, and now we start our daf for today, Tzadi Gimel, and we're going to try to prove from a Mishnah that in fact, Rabbi Akiva, who's going to disagree with the Tanakama in the Mishnah Nidarim, he maintains that Adam Machne Davar Shelo Baliol. What's the case? Now we're going to start the daf with this case, and we're going to end the daf an hour from now with the same case. It's going to be a whole swing around. The case is the following. A woman in the context of marriage has to transfer over her wages or any profits that accrue to her to her husband. That's called Maisi Yadayim. She took upon herself a neder called a konam, that any malacha that I do and any benefits thereof is like a carbon. It's like hegdesh. It's also, that's called konam. Konam is like a hegdesh or a carbon. So that's called madir es baila mi aisi adel. He enjoins her, she enjoins her husband from any benefit from that which she produces with her hands. Tanakama says, Ein tzarich lahafer. The neder is completely invalid. And the reason for that is because what's called a shibud labaila. Once she has a monetary obligation to give to him all her produce, anything that comes from her Maisi Yadayim, that's out of her realm. That belongs to him and not to her. She can't take a neder on that which is not hers, but rather belongs to him. Now, there is a possibility that she might do more work than she's obligated to do, right? The halacha will map out exactly how much she has to do. Let's say she stays overtime or into the wee hours of the night and she produces, and that is called odef. That's beyond the obligation to her husband. Nevertheless, the Tanakama here holds she can't take a neder on odef because it's a davar shelo b'aliolam. The neder can't be chal on something that she hasn't created yet. But Rabbi Akiva Omer Yafer, Yafer means that Rabbi Akiva recognized the validity of the neder, Shema Tadif Olav, because she may do beyond that which she's meshubad according to the financial agreement between a Baal and an Ish and a Baal. So, for example, let's say she makes wool. She takes the wool off the back of the sheep, and then she weaves it and makes a yarn out of it, and out of that she makes an entire beged. All this could be yoser min haroila. That's beyond the kitzvah, the special amount that she, according to the way the Chachamim organized the marriage, is obligated to do on his behalf. And that semer now, which is called odef, belongs to her and not to him. And therefore she can take a konam and prohibit him from benefiting from that semer, which is odef. But the only problem is, it's a davar shelo b'aliolam. I agree it's beyond the shibud, and it's hers and not his, and therefore it's subject to a neder, requiring therefore hafara, but where is it? It doesn't exist in the world yet. So we see clearly that Rabbi Akiva holds Adam Machne Davar Shelo B'aliolam. The Gemara says no, there's no proof. Why ha'itmar Allah? In the Beis Medrash, with regard to Rabbi Akiva's Shita in Nidarim, Amar Rav Huna Bereid Rabbi Yeshua, he qualifies the halacha, the formulation and ruling of Rabbi Akiva Omeres, when she says to the Baal that I'm prohibiting on you bin neder, not the tzemer that I will weave in the future, but rather my yadayim, my hands themselves, don't benefit from my hands. Ye asru yadai alai alecha. The yadayim are a davar sheboliolam. Yikadshu, this is what she declares, yadai liosehem. Losehem means they're like hegdish to shamayim. And now we're talking about a konam in this language, in this formulation. It's not a davar shelo bo l'olam. The adayim istu b'alma. Her hand exists in the world. And this becomes like the famous case of oser dekel liperosa. So again, if I own a fruit-producing tree, I can't take a neder on the fruit and prohibit it on you, which is called madris chaver al aperos. That's a davar shelo bo l'olam. But what I can do is I can take a neder on the elan itself, on the tree, the dekel, and I say that the dekel should be hegde, should be carbon and konam alecha for all its maisi yadayim, and the dekel is a davar shelo bo l'olam. And Rabbi Akiva, the way Rav Huna is interpreting Rabbi Akiva, is saying the exact same thing in the case of konam chani ose lefich, because she's not prohibiting that which she will produce, which is non-existent, but rather she is clearing ikachu yadai lioseim. That's like dekel leperosa. And the Gemara says that that interpretation of Rav Huna, B'das Rabbi Akiva, is pliga de Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, who's going to start, that's the kickoff of the entire sugya that we hope to learn today, Mirza Hashem, is going to enumerate all those Tanoim who maintain that Adam Makne Davar Shelo bo l'olam, and he's got Rabbi Akiva on the list. Why does he have Rabbi Akiva on the list? Adam Makne Davar Shelo bo l'olam, because he interpreted the case of konam chani ose befich lefich as literally he is prohibiting in a konam, with a konam, that which she will produce in the future. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Rav Huna kirav. Rav Huna agrees to his Rebbe Rav, and Rav agrees to his Rebbe Rabbi Yanai. And Rabbi Yanai accepts the halacha from his Rebbe Rabbi Chia. And Rabbi Chia accepts the halacha from his Rebbe Rabbi Yudanasi Rebbe. That's his uncle. But Rebbe holds like Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Meir holds like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. His Rebbe and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds like Rabbi Akiva. And what did Rabbi Akiva hold? That Adam Makne Davar Shelo bo l'olam. So we have an entire chain of the Mesorah leading from Rabbi Akiva down to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, down to Rabbi Meir, down to Rabbi Chia, down to Rebbe, and down to Rabbi Yanai, and finally ending up with Rav and Rav Huna. They all hold like Rabbi Akiva, Adam Makne Davar Shelo bo l'olam. So we're going to forget about Rav Huna Berei Rabbi Yoshua, not to be confused with Rav Huna, and his interpretation, Rabbi Akiva, of Yikodsho Yadai L'Maseyam. No, Lo Seyam. But rather, we're going to accept the straightforward chat Rabbi Akiva of Konam Chaniose Leficha. And Adam Makne Davar Shelo bo l'olam. Now the Gemara is going to go through each one of those chains, of those links in the chain, starting with Rav Huna. Rav Huna Mahi de Itmar. Rav Huna taught that Hamocher Peros Dekel Lechavero. A man sells the fruits that haven't yet grown. They're not on the tree. Amar Rav Huna Ad Shelo bo l'olam yachol lachzor bo. Until the fruit are grown, he can change his mind and back out of the deal, because the kinyan is not chal until the peros come into existence. But mishabo liolam, the very moment the peros come into existence, from the month of Nisan and on, eno yachol lachzor, he cannot rescind his agreement, because immediately when the peros come to fruition, when they grow on the tree, then at that moment the mechira of those peros is chal, even though the ma'aseh mechira was done before the peros were on the tree, before chanata. It was a davar shelo bo l'olam. Rav Nachman Omar, af misha bo l'olam yachol lachzor bo. The kinyan is not valid. He can rescind the kinyan even after the peros come into existence. Why? Because ein adam makne davar shelo bo l'olam. And since the Peros were not in existence at the time that he did a Masechet Kinyan, therefore the Kinyan is not Chal. And even when the Peros emerged and developed on the tree, Kishayava Peros Olam, nevertheless, the Masechet Kinyan was invalid because the Peros were not in existence. However, Rav Nachman says, Modina Alecha, I will concede to your din, Rav Huna, di shamit v'achil lo mafkina mineh. If the buyer, the lokeach, grabs onto the fruits before the mocher was choser bo, after the fruits grew, but before the mocher declared, I want to rescind and retract the kinyan, and he eats the peros, lo mafkina mineh. The mocher does not have the right to sue him for compensation for the peros, because we have something called mechila b'tos. He was mochel on the peros when he entered into this agreement. Again, it was b'tos because he thought the agreement was binding, and in truth, it's not binding because Rav Nachman holds ein adam machnu davar shelo b'lo. It doesn't matter. Right now, the mechila is upständig, as we say. It's standing. It's in place until he rescinds it. And now the lokeach grabbed the opportunity to take the peros after they grew on the tree, consume them, before the mocher was able to rescind his kinyan and declare that this was a tos, and he was choser. But before the chazara, everything is still in place. Now, the second in the chain is the Rebbe of Rav Huna, that's Rav. Where did Rav say, Adam makne davar shelo b'olam, the Amar Rav Huna Marav, ha'omer l'chaveros sadeh zuchani lokeach. I'm about to purchase a field. It's not mine yet. When I buy it, knuya lecha, it's yours. Rashi says, b'matana, Tosafos says, b'mecher, me'achshav. L'mafreya, from the moment that it comes into existence, kana, it's a valid kinyan. And the lokeach now is the proud owner of this field. Really a pella, because at the time that he sold him or gave him the field as a matana, it wasn't even his. But the kinyan is going to be chal at the moment that he buys the sadeh, right? He sold it, he gave it to him. When I will buy it, from the moment he buys it, the kinyan is valid. And therefore we see that Rav holds that you can be makna a davar that's not even yours, which is considered like a davar shelo b'olam. Here, it's a little different than the previous cases that we had, because here, the sadeh is physically in the world. It exists. But as far as your ability to be makna to someone else, it doesn't exist because it's not yours. And yet Rav validates the kinyan. Now we go on to the next level. Rav's Rebbe, Rabbi Yana. And the Gemara had said before that Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said that Rabbi Yana is Rabbi Chia. What's the case? Rabbi Yana Avile Arisa. What's an aris? We call it in English a sharecropper. And basically he works the land, produces the fruit and the grains of the land. In payment, he gets half of the produce, a third of the produce, sometimes a quarter of the produce, depending upon the specific agreement. And this particular aris would bring regularly, every Erev Shabbos, a basket of fruit for his master Rabbi Yana. Davi Maisile Kanta. Kanta is a measurement of Peri, Kol Mali Shabbos. Every Friday. I remember when my father was a Rav in Brooklyn, there was a member of the shul used to always bring him Erev Shabbos, a kugel. I don't remember all the, but he was in the catering business. So every Erev Shabbos, he would bring us a whole platter of food.
Oh, wow.
Hu Yoma, on that particular Friday, Nigale. Nigale means he came late or he was dilly-dallying. below Asam. Where was the Peros? Now, the reason why Rabbi Yanai needs the Peros to come into his domain before Shabbos is because he has to be mafresh trumos or maisros. So what did he do? Rabbi Yanai did the following arrangement even before the food, the peros, were delivered to him. Shkal, he took aser mi peri de besa. He has fruits in his house, tevel, and he took them and he took off maser alayu for the peros that he would in the future be receiving when finally the Aris would come around with the basket of fruits. And he had doubts as to whether or not it was a valid hafrosha. Also, Lakami de Reb Chia, he came in front of Reb Chia, his Rebbe, and asked him, did I do the right thing? Amalei Reb Chia responded, Shaper Avdas. It's perfectly legit. And now Rabbi Chia is going to derive this from a pasuk. The Sanya, it says in the parish of Maser, Leman Tilmad. Okay, so this is a pasuk in Dvarim Perek Yud Daled. A long pasuk. V'yachaltu v'nei Hashem Elokecha b'makom asher yivchar l'shakin shmot sham. Maser degoncha tiroscha v'yitzrecha b'choros k'vachet tonos pak. Leman Tilmad liras Hashem Elokecha kol hayomim. Elu, what is these kol hayomim? Shabbosos v'yomim tovim. There's a special mitzvah on Shabbos of Oneg Shabbos, on Yontif of Simcha Shabbos, and the pasuk is telling us be very careful not to be mavatal the mitzvah of Oneg Shabbos because you didn't take care of tikkun hatevel, of being mafresh masa. He says, "Lamai ilchas." Why is the Torah telling me this? If the Torah means to warn us that if all you have in your storehouse, in your repertoire, is tevel, that's all you have, and therefore the Torah is telling you, be careful to be ma'aser, to be mafresh masros, umechal, so that you can enjoy the benefit of these fruits. And be misaneg bachiloson. Frek the Gemara, frek Reb Chia, I don't understand. It's to crawl a mishrei tiltul drabanan. What's the Easter over here? You're being mafresh masros. Okay, so maybe the masros have a status of mukta before hafrasha. That's only an Easter drabanan. And now, for the purpose of being mafresh maser and being mesak in the temple so that you can enjoy it on Shabbos and Yontif, do we need a pasuk to teach me that it's mutter to do this? Lemishrei tiltul d'Rabbanan, muktzah is only an Isa d'Rabbanan tiltul muktzah. Mm-hmm. There is such a thing as achilas muktzah, but here he's going to be mafresh shuvas and maisros. He might violate tiltul muktzah, but that's only d'Rabbanan. So if he assumes that's a davar pashut that this is mutter, the Aruch LaNer points out that in addition to the problem of tiltul muktzah, Afrashas Masa is what we call tikkun mana. He's taking something that's absolutely inedible. It's a chiyuv v'isa b'dei shamayim to eat it, and he's being matir. That's like taking a kli to the mikvah shops. We don't do that. That's called tikkun mana. So he learns that what the Gemara means is that on top of tikkun mana, he has tiltul muktzah, but in both cases, it's only an iser d'Rabbanan. Okay.